I would like to introduce somebody who I met, I think the first time about 6 or 7 years ago, when she was a student with ISEC, Association Internationale des Étudiants Économiques et Commerciaux. Olga Kravchenko is Ukrainian. She was born in the Ukraine. She was brought up in the Ukraine, and then she decided to go to university in London to study drama. She always wanted to become an actress, and then she realized halfway through her course she didn't want to become an actress. And then she went and set up a virtual reality company. And her virtual reality, she set up a couple of companies. Her virtual reality company is dealing with kids who don't like museums and dealing with museums to make them more interesting by putting a gamification exercise into a journey of discovery in the world's museums. And that is Olga Kravchenko. Now, Nikki, is Olga on?
Olga is on, and I'm inviting you on the virtual stage, Olga. Thank you so much for being here and joining us in this program.
Oh, thank you so much, Marcus, for a lovely introduction, and thank you so much, Nikki, for having me here. And Marcus indeed briefly introduced myself, and in fact, before I'm gonna start telling you a little bit more about my journey, about how I ended up where I am, that would not make sense if I tried to imagine it a couple of years ago. I will tell you about how I met Marcus. So Marcus is right. We met at the conference of that was held at the place called Wakefield. On the day I met Marcus, I also torn my meniscus, so I can't do any sports now. Not that it's related, but it was an interesting coincidence. When I met Marcus for the first time, I was really impressed with his story, and I was very inspired. The thing is that there was no way of me being a 19-year-old that I could apply any of his lessons to my life. So I kept this acquaintance in my head, knowing that one day I will meet Marcus. And I didn't know why yet. I just met this person and I thought, okay, maybe in a couple of years' time, I will need to contact him. So I wrote down his name and left it for a couple of years. So now let's jump back into the story, and I will tell you a little bit about how I ended up where I am. So I came to the UK when I was 16. It was a decision made by my parents, and I was strict into coming to the UK because I was promised that I'm gonna go into drama school, as I've been working professionally in the theater for around 4 years before that. They actually sent me into college and they made me study math. And I hated that. Only now I'm coming to terms with math because I'm doing a course in coding. So suddenly it starts kind of making sense. I switched my courses 2 years into my A-levels. I realized that there is no way I will be able to change my accent because it is really strong and I am a musical. So I actually cannot naturally get people's rhythms. Like for me, all music is basically the same. And it's impossible for me to basically change the way I speak. So today I learned to love my accent because after people hear me for the first time, they never forget who I am and they never confuse me with anyone else. But back when I was 18 and I was just about to start my journey, I was a little bit unsure what was happening in my life. I still pursued the degree in drama. I focused on the technical theater, and that's where my journey with technology has started. Because rather than focusing on the performance arts, I focus on helping other artists to realize their visions, helping other actors to actually come on stage. During the course of my degree, it still didn't make sense to me. And I was like, I'm really not sure what I'm doing here. And I'm not really sure what will be my next step. I questioned every single choice I made in terms of my education. And I would never thought that I would appreciate it in the long term. A little bit of a spoiler, I did, because actually my drama degree was probably one of the most valuable things that happened to me in my life. And then it was April 2017, I think 2017 or 2016. Yeah, sorry, it was April 2016, so it wasn't that far ago. And I had a breakdown for a couple of months because I didn't want to stay in the UK anymore. After 6 years of being in the UK, I was like, this is just enough for me, and I really want to go back. At this point, I knew that I need to complete my master's, and I was preparing for having my final year in the UK and coming back home. And then something happened. So before I'm going to go into the second part of the journey, I would try to introduce you my favorite quote said by Steve Jobs, that you can't really connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. And you have to trust in something, your God, destiny, life, karma, whatever. You just need to believe that something will turn out the way it should. On the first or second months of my master's degree, I went to Venice and I ended up in Palazzo di Venezia. And Palazzo di Venezia was open at 9 p.m. Me and my friend were the only people who were actually in this museum. So there was no one else. It was 9 p.m. and suddenly the entire museum, the way it looked, turned out to be magical. And I questioned why everything around us, all the entertainment can be customized, but museums remain absolutely the same for everyone, whether you're a 9-year-old or you're a 99-year-old, whether you're an art student or the person that has never seen any piece of art. And I took myself on a kind of meta mission that I thought at this point, that I wanted to change that. I wanted to make arts and culture accessible for all, and I wanted to make art something that anyone can relate to. I started with looking into how I can turn my vision into life. Immediately, I got 300 no's from all the museums because a random student, an international student, contacting them and saying, I will build something that you haven't realized you need yet, but just like, give me a couple of seconds of your time. Didn't really go far. I still completed my dissertation in arts and culture, focusing on how virtual reality is being employed inside the museums. And that gave me the understanding that the actual audiences museums are losing, that will result of them completely running out of any private funding in the next 30 years, are kids and young adults. So I focused on trying to make arts and culture accessible for this particular segment, for trying to engage their imagination and their attention. I like asking questions, and I think now I became a little bit better in asking questions. I actually understand a little bit more about communication, and people don't think I'm a bully anymore. But when I was at university, this quality that no one could stop me from nurturing was almost a huge obstacle. Like my teachers were actually grading me down because I would make them cry sometimes in lecture. Not because I meant it, but because I really wanted to understand the core of the idea. And I would never stop asking questions. The same approach I took with entrepreneurship. And when I applied for some kind of like incubator competition at my university that I filled within 20 seconds, and I just kind of outlined how I would imagine the world should run, I got acquainted with a community of entrepreneurs at my university who actually helped me to learn about business. I had no idea what business was really about or how to take the business off the ground. When I told my father that I'm starting the business, he said that I should not, and it's the worst idea I can come up with. Today, I am the entrepreneur. I'm the award-winning entrepreneur, and it's my second virtual reality company. I have received over £200,000 of private funding. We are the recipients of the Innovate UK grant funding, and I'm the Woman in Technology Scholar by Sky. So all of that would not be even imaginable if I started questioning a couple of years ago. If I started questioning it when my father said, oh, you should not be an entrepreneur. And everyone said, well, come on, you have no idea how to run a business. But what my degree equipped me with was asking the questions until I would get the answer that would satisfy me. And now I'm still running by the same principle. I'm still asking all the questions I can. So coming back a little bit backwards again. So after the incubator, I was looking for the right person to help me to build the concept, because apart from not having any business experience, I don't have any coding experience. That sounded a little bit unfortunate. So I exchanged my time during my summer after my master's to work with a developer who was about to start his company. Within a month of being an intern, I helped him to close the first round of investment by pitching his idea around virtual reality. And he wanted me to step as his co-founder. So I became the co-founder of another business before actually pursuing Museumia. That is my passion and my baby that I love with everything I have in this life full time. Over this period of a year, I was running another company. We were winning awards. It was an incredible journey. The only thing was that it didn't necessarily work with my values, and it didn't necessarily work with my why. When we think about the values, my most important value is the family. And my most important value is being able to create the better future for my future children. I don't have any kids yet. I do have siblings. I'm a lucky sister of 3. I have an older brother who is now 17, and one day he actually ran away from me in a museum from the exhibition called Botticelli Reimagined. And I have a sister who is now 7 and the middle one who's 12. So after I ran a business for a couple of months and it was a lot of up and downs, I met the right co-founder. In fact, I didn't meet her straight away. She met Museumia first because she signed up as part of the university-wide hackathon while Museumia was already the part of Accelerator, even though I didn't have a co-founder yet. I was kind of like, I was having it as a back burner while working on another venture. So my co-founder has created a beautiful marketing campaign that had the strapline that made me realize within seconds that she was the right person to continue this journey. She said, "You see cardboard because we are using virtual reality cardboard. We see inspiration." And that was the concept that we are still actively pursuing in delivering in every single campaign that we are producing together. So when we met with her, it was February 2018, and I stalked her. I found her on Facebook because I actually haven't met her face to face. I just saw the work that she's done. I messaged her on Facebook and I'm like, you need to come into my office right now, because I just wanted to make sure that she's not intimidated, but she's kind of intrigued and a little bit intimidated enough to actually start talking to me, because I was about to offer her the position of a co-founder, even though at this point, all I knew that she really get my vision. My gut feeling really worked. And we started working together part-time from March 2018. And in August 2018, I quit my other startup. I surrendered all my shares to avoid having any conflict of interest in the future, because both startups were in virtual reality space. And from September 2018, we have been working full-time on Museumia. We are currently the team of 4. It's me, Caitlin, our CTO, who is actually my classmate that I knew for 10 years. I called him one day after not speaking to him for 5 years, being like, hey, I heard you're doing something with coding. Any chance it's virtual reality, because I'm building Museum of the Future? And he said yes. It was a surprise, but he did say yes. And since then, he's our CTO. And we have a 3D modeler. At the same time, we are running a range of internship for young people, because as part of my values and as part of my why, as understanding how to make this world a better place for the next generation, internships and having people inspired to do their own thing and become the better version of themselves is really important to me. Today we are live. We've spent since 2018, we had We spent almost 9 months in research because we had to validate that virtual reality is not hurting kids' eyes or brains. We had to make sure that the educational methodology we have created, that is a mixture between the best practices of the UK system, and there are not that many, and Finnish system kind of works well when we are creating virtual reality. And we had to recruit a number of museums. We are now working with with the National Maritime Museum of Greenwich, that is one of the biggest museums in the UK. We just released Hellenic Museum of IT Museum, so you actually can walk through the computer paradises and explore different exciting machines, such as old Atari or Commodore, or maybe walk in a labyrinth on the motherboard. And we are actively pursuing our mission of making arts and culture accessible. So this is a part of my journey. And I think what I wanted for us to talk today about is about understanding your why and your values, and how do you think your journeys have already helped you to define this why, and how your journey might have been similar or different to mine. Thank you.
So let's keep this open, and thank you so much. What an amazing journey. And
thank you.
I echo to Claudia, bravo to the energy and the direction that you followed with all the people around you, and also determining when it makes sense. I think this is also something that's really important to understand and allow oneself to know that now I need someone and this is you, and now I need someone, this is you, and find the right time to ask people for help and support. I'm curious, how about you guys? Peter, you're also on an endeavor, on a young endeavor.
Yeah. Well, for me, my journey or my why is actually, I mean, I've been chasing the Silicon Valley mountain, or whatever it's called, for many years in a lot of startups. I think 6 startups. So this startup I'm working on right now, I was really focused on finding some more purpose than just chasing the mountain. It seems like, why? It's so hard, so why not make it more purposeful? So actually what we're doing is trying to merge, you would call social impact with the Silicon Valley playbook. So we would like to make social impact scalable. So that's the journey I'm on. And for me, it's, I would like to make a lot of positive change in cities around the world, democratizing games, bringing people together around spontaneous conversations. That's what I'm doing or trying to accomplish. So I mean, my dream in the next 5-10 years is to visit Buenos Aires and see my solution bringing people together in the public space. That would be completely crazy and awesome. So yeah, that's my why.
Nice.
And it's super hard, but I mean, even if we don't get to Buenos Aires or Sydney or wherever, it's still a great journey.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful. Claudia, and I'm so happy that you've joined us. You're, to me, always a big inspiration. I feel like you're a sponge as well. When you travel the world, you see so many things that people just not seem to see. And when you come back with your insights from places and environments where I've been as well, I feel like, wow, we've been at the same city, and what you've seen and what I've seen is like, you're always expanding my vision, my view. I'm curious about your journey and the obstacles and the mentors and who you are.
Thank you so much. It's very, very great. And hi, everybody. So I feel for me, the word as you were talking, I think, we were talking before, what would you teach? It's like, learning to cultivate a sense of wonder. I feel like so many people kind of like in curiosity. I think curiosity just like, what really leads me. So many times we're sort of like, shunned or pulled away from these subjects that we find extremely curious or interesting, and being led towards places naturally, I feel is essential. And then underneath that, there's also like just understanding that whatever sparks your I feel also teaching people, the kids, to understand when they feel joy or excitement or motivated towards something, there's something there to explore, you know, like that's already like a spark that they should consider feeling a support in, and feeling that. And I also loved how you had all of these various, you've got the technology, the VR, but you were also studying drama. I love how along the road, these stories are important to be told because they teach you that life is not linear. You know, it's all very much about a searching pattern and just going from one crevice to the next and understanding there, you know, what has led me there. And then I also really liked what you said about values. That's something that so many of us, you know, starting there is actually a really interesting, you know, that's for many, that would be such a game changer, including, you know, myself. Oftentimes I have had a very sort of alternative life. I've never really been in the system, let's say. I've just always been sort of like selective. I've selected to be marginal, to be different somehow. And yet developing basic trust that this is where I'm going, developing a basic okayness with where I am, like right now, present moment. I have sun, I have food, I have water, and I have a pretty magical existence because, you know, just recognizing when all of that happens, instead of looking for this, like, you know, I definitely was taught about having a certain amount of, having a life that would lead towards happiness, and that life was very much structured around, you know, a certain amount of money in the bank, the marriage, the this, the that. And there's been a deconstruction for many about what that actually means, and being okay with where you're at, and having like an okayness with like different solutions, with so much diversity as well as gender going on as well. Being okay with your whole process, with how you talk, where you know, what you look like, your weight, you know, so many things that just really opaque people's sense of spiritual nourishment, I would say. You know, I come from a bit more of a shamanic background, and being okay with that, you know, it's like now I'm out of the closet. Now it's like, hey, guess what? I do ritual and magic. Sorry. And I love tech. So I think it's just like an existence, a cultivation of wonder and an appreciation and tolerance for all of the different parts that make us up.
Beautiful, thank you.
Yeah.
Marcus.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think about the journeys you hear, Olga's journey?
Well, I'm intrigued by Olga, and she's sort of quite quiet about being really a business lady, who has carved out the ability to win awards and raise funding and everything else. And I'd like her to share actually the journey of moving into the world of tech entrepreneurialism, from a background of performance and all this sort of stuff, into the hard-nosed reality of business. And how did you get started? And how did you raise the money? And what did you do? And why London?
Okay, so there are a couple of things to say. So my performance background sometimes helps me and sometimes really doesn't help me. When someone finds out my background is in the theater, and it's been almost 10 years since it was the last time I've actually been on stage as a child, people kind of stopped taking me seriously. An example was last year I went to Venice to speak at a European Commission conference on how virtual reality is being used currently for education, and how the methods that are being used now for development of the content are actually wrong, because it's just about the image and it's not about the outcomes that the child needs to receive as actually understanding what they're learning. And it was all rooted into our research with 3,000 children supported by Institute of Education. The conference was hosted by PwC and a couple of other big Italy players, and everything was great. Everyone was very excited about the talk. People came and talked to me before and after we finally had the networking event. And when we went to the networking event and people asked me about the background, I said, thank you very much. I am actually an actress in my past when I was very young, and that's how it started. The minute I said it, people started almost taking me less serious. That made me feel a little bit awkward, and I had the entire talk with my coach. So I do have a couple of coaches around that are helping me to overcome the issues such as imposter syndrome, because I still doubt sometimes that I can achieve something, even though I can self-talk myself into doing anything. But sometimes it's very detrimental to your mental health. And I asked them, like, is there a point of me like talking about my past? Shall I just like focus on VR and never mention that I've ever been in the theater? And she obviously said no, because it's me trying to disguise a part of my identity, the part of the reason why I might feel more confident than other people speaking on stage. The reason why I'm not afraid to ask difficult questions, because for me it is the part of some kind of magic happening together. And this is something that drives me because I'm generally a curious person, so I cannot really remove the page from my biography. Coming back to the journey, it wasn't easy because you do go through a couple of circles of hell. So firstly, people think that it's cute that you're running a business. My favorite comments when I started running a business was like, oh, you're so young, so what do you do in real life? I still receive these questions. My favorite, like when these questions arise at an investor event, you do learn over the course of the time not to take the things personally, but to be able to basically push this wall out and actually make people think about what kind of questions they're throwing at you. Unconscious bias is literally the topic I can write books on. And unconscious bias is unfortunately not something that we can fully eliminate from the society just yet, but it takes courage for every single woman and every single man, because unconscious bias works both ways, to be able to say it out loud and to say, I think that you are not right. I think that you're giving me some kind of cliche right now by possessing those questions. And if the person is trying to be aggressive or defensive, have the power to actually walk out of the room. We had to walk out of the room a couple of times with my co-founder as female in tech. It's like, oh, great. So who does your coding? And I'm like, well, I do have a developer, but I can talk you through every single line of my code. When people are asking me why I'm trying to file any Innovate UK grants, people are usually, oh, wouldn't it be just better to like start a small business? And I'm like, no, because I'm not going to be able to achieve my goals of making the world a better place for kids by just having a small business. It's about scalability. So there is the stage at the very beginning that I think breaks a lot of people when your self-confidence is being tested. And the only way to get over it is actually believe that it will end. And once you prove the certain milestones that you have in your head, for us, it was raising the first money, it was getting the first customers, it was validating our methodology, and it was signing the first big museum on board. After that, no one could question whether my business was serious or not. And then you have into the stage of negotiation. People are still trying to find your weak side. And again, I'm going to speak about unconscious bias. There is a beautiful study by the lady called Dana Kurtz. I can send the link to Nikki later, that explores how unconscious bias actually works. It's not about people telling you something horrible when speaking to you. It's about people asking the questions that does not help you to reveal your best qualities. As a female founder, I'm more likely to be asked what circumstances would make my business fail. And my male counterpart would usually be asked, what kind of measures have you already put in place to make sure your business doesn't fail in these circumstances? It's the same question, just the way it's being positioned from very, very two different ways. And it gives male founders the opportunity to raise themselves and raise their profile. And for female founders, the necessity to defend themselves and their business. Just like a little bit of a history about the unconscious bias. And the journey of raising the first money was, well, I probably had an unfair advantage because my previous business, I had a male co-founder, and I say it with a pinch of salt, but he had a PhD in biomedical engineering, and people really liked the idea of investing into someone who is a 40-year-old with PhD. But they also liked the idea that the second part of the company was a young female. So it was easy for me to close the investments within, like, on the calls. When I started running it with my female counterpart, with my co-founder Caitlin, the investment became really painful. When the example is that I can go through layers of due diligence, even still now being at the seed stage, technically. When I was experiencing it with my previous company, people would not even look at my financial forecast. They would just trust it based on the deck. And that's the difference that you need to be prepared to face. And this is the difference you need to be prepared to prepare other people too. We get a lot of questions about how do you start, where do you start your business? And I always say you start with making sure that no one and nothing that will happen around you in the next half a year will shake your confidence. That's where you start, and everything else will come.
So your confidence is could you repeat that? That was very important.
Yes.
No one's gonna shake your confidence. Like when you first start.
Yeah, you just, like, when you first start, the only thing you should be worried for the first half a year is that nothing or no one will be able to shake your confidence that the concept will work. The first half a year is crucial because that's when you get strength to validate your assumptions. You get the strength and the courage to actually start talking to your customers, to start defining the prototype. It's the first couple of months when you start speaking to people that will potentially give you money or provide with some of support. Or in our case, it was also pitching a lot. I've probably done around 150 pitches over the course of the last year. And that's not including private one-to-one conversations. You get 90% of lows and you get 10% of highs, but it doesn't matter because where the high brings you, lower can never bring you, like, in reality. As soon as you understand that it will always be a very spiky journey, you know that you probably haven't just enough strength to survive the next curve, and then you will feel better after your next high.
Would you say that a lot of like what would sort of like build your unshakable confidence would be like, you know, having your values established very much at the beginning to really establish where your fire can come from? Because sometimes, you know, you can question yourselves, and like, what would you consider an anchor towards establishing rock solid confidence, even when inside maybe you're a novice or you don't feel so confident?
I think, so having your why and having your values defined is actually one of the hardest things for you as a human being, because the amount of the information you receive and the amount of questions you ask yourself is just so huge. It's really hard to make sure that you stay in the same place at the same time. So what I wanted to introduce to you on the call is the Franklin Pyramid that is quite useful. So Franklin Pyramid allows you to, so Franklin Pyramid is basically a pyramid that consists of governing values, long-range goals, intermediate goals, and daily tasks. Everything will change apart from your governing values. If your value is a family, or if your value is peace, or if your value is the accessibility and equality, it's very unlikely that your value will actually change. Your long-term goals will actually define your why. And sometimes why might also change, and this is okay. I think a lot of us get hung out really on trying to make sure that we are as cohesive in our lives, and we are humans, and like every day we receive so much information that might change the journey. But when you have the same set of values, that kind of serves you as a North Star a little bit. So you know at least the direction you are moving to, and everything else comes. Does that answer your question in terms of values versus why as well? And in terms of self-confidence, so everyone suffers from imposter syndrome, and it's normal. Sometimes you might have done something like hundreds of times, and you would think, and you would still question whether you can do it again. I use a trick. It takes your brain around 5 seconds to decide whether it's possible or not. So once you have an idea, you have literally 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to act on it. Because after that, your brain will try to figure out some kind of tools to stop you from maybe doing something extreme or something crazy or something that your brain deems as not safe. So when you're having all the fears coming, for example, you need to give this very important phone call, or you need to submit this application, or you need to give the public speech. The fear lives only within this 5 seconds. So if you can just count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and do this, it will be too late to regret. It just like the trick, it kind of works. It sounds ridiculous, but try it. If there is something you're doubting whether to act on it or not, try to act on it immediately and like literally count in your head 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, because it would stop your brain for giving you the clues why it might be impossible, why you might not be good enough. And it's all not true, but your brain is trying to protect you.
Incredible. I feel like I'm muted as it would be my role to moderate here, but this is a self-sufficient group. I'm constantly making notes. I'm the guest at my party here. Thank you for this. I'm really enjoying it. Amazing. Evelyn, I know you're part of this session and part of previous sessions, and the conversation that we're having is how much can all of this, what's happening here in businesses in the industry, can be applied in science? We developed the workshop Exponential Science, and it was amazing, such a great group, and it was really good energy. And I love you for coming back and supporting this program and coming back and being part of these conversations. I'm curious, I guess you must have a stack of questions aggregated over the 2 tours that you partly participated, third one now. What's your thought? Share what's the burning question? What's the thing that you would like to discuss when you would have coffee, when you have Olga without audience and me here for a coffee?
Yeah, there is a lot of going on for sure. I'm from a totally different background. I'm very much into a kind of seeker system rather than if I'm looking into my values and my why. I would not say rather to change the system. I don't think that's the point. It's rather about making use of the system to do something which is meaningful for me, probably put it that way. And then try to, and that's actually why and how I try to work with other methodologies, work together with Nikki, try to apply learnings from other areas where I see innovation happen and actually societal change happen, and meeting societal change, and try to offer the opportunity for science and scientists to get into the position to do so at all, and work together with other people to kind of find out that we are answering really societal questions rather than just doing research which is curiosity driven and meets barely or quite just from a long-term perspective society. So I would not say it's not necessary. I definitely think research which is totally not related to any, let's say, concrete application is relevant, but it is quite relevant to understand the knowledge and try to figure out where is knowledge and where are knowledge carriers and bring them together. And they could be of quite different areas of society. And that's the relevant point where I'm trying to work. So I'm very much interested in the points of education. I do see there is a quite concrete link to science as well. Not speaking about education, which is related just to children. It's related to our lifelong learning processes, and that's why I do think it is quite nice to think about that. And as you know, I'm doing that with art and doing work together with artists quite a lot to, let's say, figure out how can knowledge be transported in a different way. So that was quite nice as well to see how you do it with new technologies and try to meet people by in doing so. I'm quite interested into and will definitely pick you up and have a look into your book. So that's quite helpful for me. I do think there is a noble level of trying to meet my needs, and for sure with Marcus, we had a brief discussion yesterday as well already. So I do think there is high potential to look into that more concrete from science point of view.
For sure. I'd love to continue the conversation.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I'm processing, I'm digesting. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this. I loved your story, and I loved your brain, and your character. The last 20 minutes.
Just something else I wanted to bring while we are still while I'm bringing on the story, and I'm sure that this is something that can be related to anyone. So all of us have different character traits. Some of us are loud, some of us are quiet, some of us are extroverts, introverts, or all of us are different, and it's normal. And in my case, I am very loud. I'm generally very loud. As we are having remote working with my partner who's in another room, I've been told to get a little bit quiet, and I do take this feedback on board because I understand why it's happening. But when, for example, I was just starting my journey before the business was backed by investors, before the business was backed by funding, before the business was backed by users, I've been told a lot to dial down. I've been told not to be so articulate, not to be so loud, not to be so energetic, because everyone told me that my current personality comes as unprofessional and too young. And I think I had enough of self-respect not to listen to them. And that's just something that I'm thankful to my parents for, because my parents were always encouraging me to be myself. Even though my father told me not to start a business, I think he was just trying to protect me from all the nervous breakdowns I'm having, and I'm going to have more in the future. But I know that for a lot of individuals who are starting their journeys, it is really, really hard not to listen to external advice about their character trait. So whatever you do, and I think it's it doesn't matter whether you're just starting or you're already a seasoned entrepreneur. You need to have enough of the self-respect to be who you are without taking someone's toxic feedback on board. Just another thought that I just wanted to bring up.
Olga, what sort of people told you to dial down? Were they men or women, young, old?
Usually it would be men. It would be men that are slightly older than me. It wouldn't it usually would be someone who is between 6 to 7 year old difference from me. So they would think that they're in place to advise. And with advice, I always say advice that is asked is always welcome. The advice that is not asked for should not be here. And this is just something that I am very cautious about. And as you build your business more and more, you get more and more unwanted advice. And you just learn to be very, not rude, but very, very precise of what advice and from which people you're actually taking, and which advice you're going to cut because it eats into your time. But yeah, it was usually men who were telling me that I'm being too loud and being too unprofessional. And then it was during the accelerator program especially. And I think it influenced me a little bit because I've been told that every day, because we've been every day in the office, sometimes over 12 hours, and you would feel uncomfortable being yourself. Or it might be that just now I have much more responsibility on my shoulders. So sometimes I myself down, not to burn the energy that quickly, because I need to deal with more decisions on a daily basis.
So what advice would you give to another girl who's full of ideas and is also told, turn the volume down?
I would tell her to tell them to go away in probably a little bit more rude language that I would not want to use on the Zoom call. But usually so we, like, as part of Women in Technology program, I do a lot of outreach to young girls, and it can be the girls who are 10, because there are so many girls who are 10 years old who are being told that they should behave like a lady. If anyone says it in front of me, I'm like, no, the child should run around and it should be as expressive as possible. You cannot tell a 10-year-old to dial down. This is literally inhuman. But as a girl, you're usually being told to dial down when you're 10. And I see girls being like, yeah, but what if no one listens to me? The thing is that there are many more good people than bad people in the world. And believing that the positivity and optimism and support and this justice to some extent really prevails in the real world is something that gives me strength to pursue my dreams, that always gave me the strength to pursue my dreams. And I'm telling young girls to make sure you have people around you who can support you, or you proceed until you can find this person who can support you even when you're feeling the lowest. And if you can't find anyone, come to me, I will support you, but just try to find it on your own. It's not supposed to be easy, but it's not supposed to be hard at the same time. It's just human support and human respect and the ability to rely on each other.
Well, if it's any consolation, Olga, I get told, wow, you're so enthusiastic about things. And I go, yeah. And then quite often they use that as a bit of an insult to say, you're so enthusiastic, it's almost removing your credibility. So, and I don't get it. It's almost as if people expect some sort of peculiar, without emotion, automated machine, talking about business or talking about opportunities. It is extraordinary. And I also think that sometimes people are very nervous about feeling that there is something much better than they're currently contemplating. You know what I mean? They're almost seeing that as a personal attack. I don't know what it is, but maybe that's... Peter, does that happen to you? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm now unmuted. Yeah, it has happened a lot, actually. It happens all the time, but I cannot get used to it, and I try to really control myself, and then get back on it on a very. It's hard to explain, but it's really annoying. I mean, especially if you are thinking big and have big dreams, and you are in an early stage, and there's a lot of questions you cannot answer. It's so annoying if you stumble into people that are kind of like, yeah. If that was a good idea, then somebody had done it already. That's kind of like the standard shit, and I really hate it. I think just a comment to you, Olga. I think you have an awesome energy. Totally. I mean, you should just. You're super authentic, and I think the combination of being very focused and authentic, and I'm sure you know what you're doing, and that's a good thing. That's the winning path, as I see it. And you just have to shut the fuck up. I don't know if it's allowed to say that. But yeah, just be yourself. I think that's the winning path.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I guess.
But it's. I mean,
sorry,
I just add a thing. I mean, it's. it's like for me to do a new startup, it's kind of like making an expedition. Like in the old sense, you have to convince a lot of people in what you're dreaming of, and it's still very tacit. I mean, it's just extremely hard, and it just takes a lot of guts to stick to what you believe in. So I guess I think you would be a really, really good mentor, and I'm happy to hear that you're talking with the younger girls, because you're kind of like a role model. And I think it's important to remind ourselves and each other that it's worth sticking to crazy ideas, because I mean, you never know. Suddenly it happens when you put in a lot of energy in making it happen.
And I think we
Thank
hear a
you.
lot of chapter 40 stories, but no one's talking about chapter 1 to 39. But everyone wants to be at chapter 40. And to me,
Yeah.
it's enlightening to have these
Yeah.
conversations, right? You have to.
It's always very hard. Like what we found the hardest, probably for me and Caitlin, my co-founder, was putting things into perspective, because you either would have someone that is just starting like us, or someone who's already so successful that you cannot really clearly see how to get there. And and people tell you the stories, but then the stories are still so random and so non-logical. It's like it's not like we got from A to B. It's like from A to Z, it took me just letter O and I was there. And you're like, what about all other letters? What about all other steps? These are the steps I care about, because at least I can somehow relate. By revealing just one letter out of the entire alphabet, it doesn't really help. I do like using random metaphors, I'm sorry.
No, I love this. I love that conversation. I think it brings so much value to everyone here, but also everyone who has the privilege of listening to you and learning from you and being your mentee. This is big. And I guess when you really also, I guess we're also obliged not to forget our own chapter 1 to 39 when we're on 40.
Okay.
And the thing is that after chapter 40, there might come chapter 2 and not 41. And I think that's something to be aware of, that these are the bounce backs and the standing up and wiping off the dust from the shoulders and getting up on your feet and walking over that are so important. Get reminded to these.
Something that I just wanted to add on what you said, that sometimes after any chapter, it might be chapter 1 or chapter 2 again, and it's normal. I'm very happy and I'm very lucky that in the UK and in the US and in most of the Western world, the idea of failure is not being necessarily treated as a failure anymore. It's being treated as the idea of the experience and something that you need to go through. If you're starting a business or if you're choosing the career, it doesn't matter, that's how you learn. I do know that in other countries, when we speak about Eastern Europe, for example, from Ukraine, from Russia, the idea of failure has still not been celebrated. It's still a failure. If you dropped out of university because you hated the course, you failed. If you quit your job because you didn't want to go there anymore, you failed. If you stopped running a business or if you didn't make it to a certain profitability, you failed. And this is really, we are very, very lucky if we understand that failure is just a word and it's just a part of the experience, a part of a journey, because this makes you more courageous. It makes you brave. It gives you this edge of what successful people have. It makes you successful.
Though I think there is an internal and an external force when we talk about failure.
Yeah.
Right? One is, how much do people around us understand something that fails as in failure, versus how much do we allow ourselves to be an amateur, not knowing, not being professional, not being perfect, right? And I think that maybe there's a lot more people out there who want to be perfectionists, who want to do a perfect solution rather than just a solution.
Yeah.
Which basically means that you forbid yourself, you don't allow yourselves to do mistakes or to publish mistakes, right? You do your mistakes by your own. I had a conversation earlier with a beautiful friend, and he is great and inspiring, but he would not want to see anyone out there watching him making a mistake. I feel like what's better than making mistakes in front of audience, because it teaches you even more.
So Olga, would you contemplate setting up in the Ukraine, setting up a branch in the Ukraine, or do you think that it's too early stages at the moment for any startup in the Ukraine?
There are some very successful startups that are not supported by Ukraine. They are supported by external accelerators. You probably heard about Grammarly. Grammarly is said by Ukrainians. It's one of it's the best grammar checking software that is available out there. There are a lot of talent. In Ukraine, we have one of the greatest design minds and developers. In Ukraine, what we are currently lacking, that I really hope will change one day, and I hope I will be the part of this change, is the startup mindset. People are motivated. There are loads of freelancers. Almost everyone is a freelancer, and all of them are working for nothing for the companies that are based in Europe or that are based in the US, because these people don't have the confidence that they might be able to succeed on their own. And this is what upsets me. This is what I personally think is absolutely horrendous in the place of so many opportunities. So I would want to change it one day, and I would love to be the part of a change in Ukraine and Russia and Belarus. We tried to work with Ukrainian museums. They said yes very quickly, and that's where it stopped. Because the way the bureaucracy is still working in Ukraine, the way that people are making the decisions is not streamlined at all. I was receiving really weird, they don't want to have any responsibility taken. I'm asking, usually in my head of terms, I'm asking museums to take responsibility over any copyright claims if the objects I'm using are being scrutinized by another company. This is just normal because that's the object that museum belongs to. The Ukrainian museums are asking me to take any claims that have any responsibility on them, and that's not really how the world works. And it's already been 6 months. We are offering, just for your information, we are offering free VR experiences for museums. Museums are not even paying anything to us. We are the ones who are producing, who are charging parents or external organizations, and the profits are going back to the museum. So we create the independent revenue stream for a museum. And still, even having these terms, I have received so many random comments by their lawyers that I was like, well, you know what? When I have a chance to hire a full-time Ukrainian lawyer, I will need to get back to you. But for now, it's just not possible.
Crazy.
Marcus, Olga, Marcus, thank you for guest hosting. Olga, thank you for sharing your experience, your journey, your energy, your passion, your belief system with us. It was really beautiful.